The year was 1991, RHCP were playing a show in Cambodia. Anthony Keidis was relaxing in his tour bus, tying off his arm and preparing to inject cheap black tar heroin. His hair was matted with what could only be either blood or semen, his arms were coated with a fine mesh of jags from alternating between injecting and skin popping. Suddenly, Chad burst through the door, his enormous forehead knocking over several guitar cases in the process. "Anthony, we have a major problem," he shouted. "John just overdosed again and we're in a third world hellhole. There's no way we'll ever revive him this time." John stopped and pondered. "There are two ways to restart a human heart," he stated with absolute certainty. "Adrenaline is the first option. Do we have any?" Chad took an immediate mental inventory and realized that they didn't. "Okay, that gives us one other option." He jumped up from his bed. "What would that be?" whimpered Chad. Anthony looked into Chad's eyes and radiated an aura of utter seriousness. Deep anal penetration. Flea was crouched over John's body, his withered heroin-ravaged body lay motionless in the parking lot between their tour buses. Anthony approached the scene and immediately began disrobing. "Get out of my way or take off your pants, I have a life to save." He unzipped John's pants and rolled him over onto his stomach. The rest of the band members began removing their clothes, they knew what they had to do. Anthony penetrated John with all 4 inches of his miniature meat pole. He struggled to thrust back and forth against John's small, tight asshole, combined with the ever-flowing river of shit pouring out. "My cock isn't enough, does anyone have anything bigger?" Knowing full well that Anthony possessed the largest cock in the band, Chad and Flea set about finding an alternative. Within seconds Flea returned with a hammer, the handle already lubed. Without hesitation Anthony plunged the hammer into John's ass and began stomping on the claw to stimulate John's prostate. This excited everyone in the band, most noticeably Flea, who was fully erect. After much force John came to, his cock was hard and throbbing. The band rejoiced. "The only problem now is that I'm so horny. My balls are like 2 turkeys filled with cum," whined Flea. Anthony grinned. "Well guys, it's time to celebrate John's rebirth the Red Hot Chili Peppers way." He immediately began sucking Flea's dick as Chad and John began rubbing dicks. "I can wait to blow my load in your mouth," yelled Flea over the excitement. Anthony took the shriveled, wart-ridden cock out of his mouth and said, "Give it away, give it away, give it away now," which caused Flea to almost immediately ejaculate, filling Anthony's pallor eye sockets. "Can you see anything?" asked Flea. "All I see is white as snow," replied Anthony. John and Chad had already been rubbing dicks for so long they began chaffing. John began fist-fucking Chad in the ass. Chad ejaculated but begged him to continue. Caught up in the moment, John accidentally grabbed some of Chad's intestines and prolapsed his ass as he pulled out. "Coleman Rose!" shouted Anthony as he mutually masturbated with Flea. Chad grimaced, then farted out more of his intestines. A dank aroma enveloped the band, much to their joy. Feces began to slowly pour out of Chad's fissured and protruding intestines. "I'll get it!" shouted Flea, who ducked under Chad and allowed the shit to pour into his mouth. Anthony was so roused he asked John to begin fisting him with the intent of also prolapsing. John obliged and prolapsed Anthony as well. John began licking Anthony's soft pink lovesic as Anthony jacked him off. Chad began backing his ass into Anthony's so their prolapses would rub together. Chad grabbed both of their prolapses and began jacking them off like giant pink cocks. "I'm coming!" shouted Anthony and Chad at the same time. Shit sprayed all over Chad and John's face, covering them in a brown and red mist. The tour continued on and John eventually left, rejoined, then left the band for good, but none of the 4 friends ever forgot that night, for that was what the Red Hot Chili Peppers were founded to do. The end.